Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello and welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Today's episode, I am welcoming guest Cynthia Schulz. And I was particularly excited to meet with her, one, because she came highly recommended by a friend of mine. And so that goes a long way. And I was excited to meet with her because she has gone beyond where I have. Her daughter is 40, which makes her in her 70s. And beyond just age, she has experience way beyond where I do and where I've taken my son. And we all know that there isn't a manual for us moms, but there are wise guides. And Cynthia Schulz is one of those wise guides. I think you're going to love her very spunky spirit. And I experienced her as somebody who was like full of fight, like a little feisty in a way I loved, but also so full of love. And I'll tell you a little bit more about her. After a 45-year career as a corporate communication executive, she's embarked on an encore career as an author devoted to helping individuals with disabilities. She's a mom of 4, one with developmental disabilities. All have shaped her more than any corner office ever could. She's recently published her first book, Shine On, Raising Our Kids with Disabilities to Lead Bright, Happy Lives, to help families like hers. It's the book that she wishes she had when she received her daughter's diagnosis, which, as many of us will relate to, rocked her world. It's full of unvarnished stories of lots of families, hard-won wisdom, and can-do optimism. It reads like a love letter. And after experiencing Cynthia for myself, I can say, yeah, I feel like what I loved about her is this hard-won wisdom and can-do optimism that doesn't disregard processing the grief and the hard. She really exemplifies what I hope to be, which is a mom who doesn't stop when she comes up against barriers. Yes, in the episode, we talk about what happens when we get really tired and when it feels so dark and hard. We talk about that. But she helped orient us towards more possibility, more hope, and ultimately a happy life for both us and our children. Okay, with that, let's welcome Cynthia to our show. Welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast, Cynthia. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. I am delighted to be in like company.
Like company. That's such a nice way of saying it.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let's dive into your story. I often refer to kind of this part of our conversation as your becoming. Your becoming of owning the identity as a caregiving mom, a special needs mom, or however you identified yourself. Tell us a little bit about what that was like for you 40-ish years ago. Is that correct?
That's correct. Ish years ago, I had 2 children. We went on to have 4 children. But when I had just my first 2, my second one, my daughter, Noelle, we call her Noni, she was, I thought to be a very typical infant, but she was slow in reaching a lot of her developmental milestones. And it became concerning enough by the age of 2 that we went for some testing. So we do the right thing. We go for testing. One day, several months later, I opened an envelope that came in the mail. Kids are playing in the living room. It was the test results from the neurologist. And I'm reading these test results, and the last line says, diagnosis, mental retardation.
Wow.
What? What? What am
a
I reading?
delivery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a letter. And
Mhm.
I was on my knees
Mhm.
in my kitchen on the floor.
Mm.
It was a mess. I couldn't, I'll never forget the moment.
Yeah.
And it is no way to deliver news to a mom.
Mhm.
And at the times, mental retardation was the clinical diagnosis in the 1980s.
Mhm.
So I'm not using a derogatory term. That was her clinical diagnosis. And boy, that diagnosis hits you way harder than words like mental delay
Uh-huh.
or,
Yeah.
or even developmental disabilities. Mental retardation, you know, hits you between the eyes. What is going on with my child?
Mhm.
And so it was a life-changing moment. At first, it was lots of worry, lots of fear, lots of crying myself to sleep at night. But at some point, I just decided this is not going to ruin our lives. It's not. We have to figure out how to make this a wonderful life. We do, because I am not going to look at this like a life sentence.
Well, and actually, some of the language that you had shared as we went back and forth for me to prepare for the episode is your words were, I decided to play to win. And I
Yes.
particularly loved that language. Would you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
My philosophy, I look at life a little bit like a card game.
Mhm.
And, you're always picking a new card from the deck. And
Mhm.
when I picked the your daughter has disabilities card, that card sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have folded.
Mhm.
I could have just taken myself out of the game. But I said, all right, I have this card. How am I going to play this to win? And then you start to come up with strategies. It's just like, figuring out how to do anything. You put together your strategic plan or whatever it is. But I
Mhm.
am not at the end of my life going to be a woe is me. I had this awful thing happen to me. I am going to be happy and joyful, and so is she. So, how do I make this life so good for her? How can she be so happy with all these disabilities
Mhm.
and have all of us be happy too?
Mhm.
I don't want to bring down the whole family. And so was my mindset. And I played it to win.
I love
Something
this analogy. I love it so much. I love the visual that you gave us because many people can interpret the card that you pulled as an unwinning hand. Like basically there's no way to win. Winning defined as you say is for
Yeah.
all of you to be content, fulfilled and happy, having a happy experience here on earth. And many people would fold, as you said, like maybe not give up, but actually relate to it as impossible to win. And I love that you're like, okay, well, this card's in my hand. We're not getting rid of this card. But essentially, as I'm kind of interpreting your analogy, is like, how many other cards do I have to pull? How long do I have to keep playing here, right at this table to win, to come up with a winning hand? And it could look a million different ways. And I love this way of being that you're describing as
right.
deciding that you will win and determined to do so.
And it can look, you said something very important. It can look a million different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Winning can look different for all parents out there. Whatever your journey is, it can look different. But how is your journey going to become a blessed one?
Mm-hmm.
How is this child going to be fulfilled? And that's all part of it's all the same things you think of for the rest of your children. What difference does it make that one has disabilities?
Well, here's actually what's coming to my mind that I want to invite into this conversation as well, because I'm all in. I'm all in for this conversation. And I think one of the distinct differences, especially as, I have 4 children as well, so we share that commonality. And I would say one of the distinct differences is the amount of grief that I experience in raising my son with disabilities as compared to my others. Of course, there's grief involved in all the others, but I would say different amounts thus far in my life. And okay, so we're going to play the win. We're both aligned in that, but how do we have grief invited to the card table, if you will? How does that look, or how did that look for you in your journey?
It is okay to grieve. It's necessary to grieve. When you get this news, it feels like it's the end of the world. You know it's not, but it is about the closest thing you can think to being the end of the world. And for a long time, you lived through some very dark days. I called them my dark days, where it was hard to put one foot in front of the other, where there was just a sadness that stayed with you everywhere you went. And it goes on for longer than you wish it would. But at some point, I thought to myself, you can't stay sad forever. You got to figure a way through this sadness. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a time to turn off the waterworks and let's get down to business and figure out how I'm going to do this. Because the sadness isn't going to get me anywhere. So in getting to work, and when I say getting to work, in learning everything I could about my daughter's disabilities and finding every resource I could, all of that was work. And it took my mind off of sadness. And it was getting us somewhere. We were making a little bit of progress. So I just needed to turn off the waterworks. And after doing that, I was still super sensitive. Somebody could say something to me and I could just burst into tears. And then I decided, you're going to have to grow a really thick skin. You're going to have to find your steel, because don't let these people, teachers or doctors or whoever, tell you she'll never do this and she'll never do that and she'll never do the other thing. Don't let that penetrate your heart. So you find your steel.
Yeah.
And then, so you don't let things hurt you as much as they would tend to when people tell you, oh, she'll no to this, no to that, she'll never do whatever. And then after that, I think I started getting angry. Okay, so, which is okay. All right, I was overly sensitive and everything was just piercing my heart. And then these no's that I was getting started to piss me off. Okay. And I said to myself, do not take no for an answer. Why can't she ride that school bus? Why can't she do this? I'm not saying she can do it the same way everybody else does, but we can do it a little differently. And it can work. Because what was happening at the time my daughter was ready to go to kindergarten was inclusion of kids with disabilities in public school. I mean, that was the most beautiful, serendipitous coming up together of two events. So she's ready to go to kindergarten, and they're ready to have kindergartners test, it was a pilot program in our state of Ohio, test whether kids with disabilities could be in class together with a special education teacher and a typical teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought of that made me so happy because there are a lot of things that she cannot do. There's very, very many difficulties with intellectual and cognitive and motor, but she's got really good social skills, and she makes friends easily, and she is mostly delightful. So, and I say that with, all the love in my heart for her. So I just thought inclusion would be so good for her, and it made me happy. And it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for her that she went on to spend the next 12 years, and more than that, up till she was 22, in school as an inclusion student. And being one of the first students in inclusion, she was always a pioneer. So every time it was time to go to the next grade or the next level of middle school or the next level of high school, they'd never seen anyone like her coming before. And I had to advocate so hard for what she needed.
Let me ask you about this part of the story, because the visualization that I actually identified for myself of kind of what it feels like a lot of times is that, like, it's, I don't know, Braveheart's an old movie, but it's what came to my mind, where it's like I was headed into battle, whatever it might be, whether it's medical or educational or social. It feels like I am the leader of this battle and I'm the one out in front, and it's really tiring. So how did you cope with being the front runner and the advocate that's literally pioneering this? How did you deal with the fatigue that comes along with that?
What gave me energy was people telling me no.
Oh, I like this.
When I heard no, I got a little feisty.
Uh-huh.
And I said, that is not the answer I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
We need to work together to find a yes somewhere in this conversation. And one of my strategies for her in middle school was this. You tell me the teacher for typical education classes, half of her classes were special educational classes, half were typical. And I would say, you tell me the teacher that wants her. That's the class we'll go into. I don't care if it's French. We'll be in French class if the French teacher wants her. It turned out the science teacher and the English teacher both wanted her in their class. Those are not easy subjects to, this wasn't like chorus. Okay. Mm-hmm. How are we going to make this work? And we came up with some really creative accommodations, because I said, I'm not pushing a rock uphill by going with a teacher who doesn't want her. The teacher is telling me I'm not trained. Well, so what I say to I'm not trained, I did not major in special education. God gave her to me anyways. Okay? He apparently had faith in me. So this notion of that there's some sort of special training.
Yeah, I know. That it exists out there somewhere.
Yeah. Like they're all the same. All kids with disabilities are the same. I mean, one. So I absolutely didn't want to have her in the class of any teacher who didn't really want her. And
okay, so I want to highlight this beautiful combination that you have of this commitment to find the yes and not accept no as basically is the dead end that could stop you from creating this experience for your family and for her. But also then not getting engaged in an idealistic right-wrong conversation where you're going to try to make it even harder for yourself. So on one hand, you're saying, I will push down any barrier. On the other hand, you're like, where's my least barriered places, as in which teachers
Yeah.
are most receptive
Yeah.
to this, to my child. And I love this combination that you've, shared with us, because I think it shows dedication, persistence. It shows your ability to see beyond what exists, but also giving yourself a way to work that's not just going to drive you crazy. And
Ab-
probably everybody else
absolutely.
around you too.
A-
Yeah.
and I think having other children in the schools also gave me a little bit of a buffer with teachers and
Mm-hmm.
principals and everybody else around the IEP table, because they thought I was a very reasonable mom when they knew I
I
had
like
three
to
other
tell myself
kids.
that I like to actually, I don't know if this is something that I should share publicly, but I feel the same way. I'm like, well, look at what we have here. Like, we have a child who's well behaved. We have a child who gets straight A's. Like, this
Mhm.
is how we parent at my house. Now, we also have a child who does a lot of other things. So let's just recognize this is not a nurture issue.
Yes.
And let's
Yes.
take this as, okay, wow, okay, she is a reasonable person. Like, she shows up on time. She's, whatever. So I don't know if that, I don't know. I feel like that maybe is giving myself more credit, but I see what
No,
you're
I
saying
think
with
that
that.
helps you. I really, because they knew me as my other kid's mom before they knew me as Noelle's mom.
Hmm.
Um, and, you know,
It made it harder to other you. I guess that's what I'm thinking about. I could see still on this day that if they're coming from a place of ignorance, as in they have not experienced disability yet, that they could put you in a box along with Noel and not engage
right.
and not see you through the same lens as they would see a typical child and a typical mother. And I feel like by having that, in your case, child that went ahead, in my case as well, I feel like it requires them to engage in a way of already like this familiarity, which as
Yes.
humans is just going to be easier for everybody. So,
And I can give you a very good example that happened in an emergency IEP meeting that I called when the high school was to build out during the summer an independent living center
huh?
so the kids could learn independent living skills,
Yeah.
because there was no place that they could learn them in the high school. Had great conversations. It was to be built that summer. And at the start of the school year, turned out nothing had been done. I called an
Hmm.
emergency IEP meeting and I really let them have it. But before I did, I said, went to the football game,
Hmm.
because they were telling me it was a budget matter.
Uh
I
huh.
said,
Uh huh.
went to the football game. And you know me, all my three other kids are all in sports. And we were there and I saw the team come out, with their nice uniforms and helmets. And then I saw the band come out with beautiful uniforms and all the instruments. Oh, by the way, they all rode the buses there, and
Hmm.
the cheerleaders, pom poms. And I said, last I knew that was extracurricular activity.
Hmm.
Now, you know me,
Hmm.
and I'd be the last one to want athletics to go. Last one. Don't you tell me that you can't find budget dollars for what I consider to be my daughter's basic education.
Hmm.
You get new computers for the other kids, and you give kids with special needs the used computers. No. What
Hmm.
makes you think I think it's okay to give three of my kids new computers and one a hand me down?
Hmm.
No, it's not
I
happening.
I'm probably delusional, but I'm like, I hope that wouldn't happen today, but it probably would. But okay, I want to switch gears a little bit. And thank you for giving that example in terms of what it looks like for you to kind of go in and both say, "Hey, I'm a fan of all the things you're doing,
Yeah.
and we got to figure out a way to serve all of your students, not just the ones that can play all these cool sports." Okay, You've shared a little bit about identity and having a multi-dimensional identity. And so first let's start with what was the positive impact to you of having this, identity as a parent, a professional, a woman, etc. What was that impact for you like?
Well, there were a few years I was a stay-at-home mom for about 4 years when I got the diagnosis, and I was pregnant with my third child, and I had to get all this under control. And
Hmm.
so I took a pause in my career. I did what I had to do for the good of my children, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I am not built to be a stay-at-home mom. It's just me. And I admire anyone who is really good at that. I knew I just just couldn't be only a special needs mom. It was getting me out of balance. I
Mm.
was so singularly focused on this child that needed so much of me. And having the other kids helped me balance life a little bit better because they were not as needy, but they needed me too. So I could get a little balance that way. But I also saw myself as my mother's daughter, my sibling's sister, my husband's wife, and a working professional. I was all those things, and I couldn't give up all those other identities because I was making myself feel guilty if I wasn't spending every minute with my daughter, right?
Hmm.
So I I knew at one point I really wanted to go back to work, and I had to figure out how that was going to happen because for me to go back to work now was going to mean something different. I would have to hire a nanny. I would have to make decent money to hire a nanny. Okay, let's work on that, Cindy. So I did. I found a job and I found a great nanny and I just made that work. It's a lot of work.
Hmm.
Anybody, any mom, any working mom knows how much work it is. It's a lot of work, but I have energy and I like to work. That's
Hmm.
just, that's just me. And so I think if I want to be the best mom I can be, I do have to be physically and mentally healthy.
Hmm.
Or I can't take care. I want to be a happy mom for my kids, a fulfilled mom, a mom that they can be proud of and a role model. And there are, like you had said before, there are a million ways to find solutions. And I found my solution thinking really deeply about what would make me satisfied and happy, as well as what would make my children be the best they could be, a situation that was good and positive for them.
I love it so much. So essentially, listening to what who you were, and then creating environments in which you could thrive in all the different identities that you had. And it wasn't that you wanted to give up the identity of a caregiving or special needs mom. That didn't work for you to have that be your singular focus,
I didn't want the special needs mom role to
consume you. And I loved this aspect that you had brought up kind of as we talked about what to talk about today, because I think that I see this kind of cycle, we'll call it, or evolution, where your story is, I think, a great example of that. That in the early days, oftentimes it does consume us, right? We're learning everything. We are oftentimes surviving some really critical medical
Oh,
interventions
yeah.
that are necessary, right? We're going from 0 to 100 all in a short amount of time in some cases. And so it does, I think, start to consume us. And this is where I see almost like this divergent road where some stay there, where it continues to consume. And I think that's where it leads to roads of resentment and bitterness. And I would say not grief necessarily, but I would say suppressed emotion. not an ability to actually process the emotions. Alternatively, I see moms that take on the identity, but continue to reinvent themselves to essentially create new
Yes.
identities in addition to this new one that they have that they didn't want. None of us wanted this identity, but now we have this. And so it's like almost back to your card game analogy. Okay, now this is in our deck. So we're going to keep this card, but what other cards are we going to add to it so that, your words were so well said in terms of that you can be happy and fulfilled and a role model to your other children, of course, to moms like us.
And as you had said, there's so many ways to do this, whether it is really embracing that role and branching out from it, or it's doing what I did. There's no one size fits all. You need to find your own happy journey on this kind of crazy journey. I'll tell you another thing, and I think this is positive about the way the world has moved. When I went back to work, never really talked much about my children. I had to keep them pretty invisible to be thought of as somebody who was serious about her career. So I had 4 children, but they were largely, I kept them invisible. And I had one with developmental disabilities and didn't talk about that either, because for women, women, especially women in leadership, the workplace was pretty unforgiving if you were drawn away from it by your children. So today, I think times have changed to some degree, and there's, of people's families and time that it takes to spend with those families and flexibility that parents need to be able to do those things. So ability in today's workplace and attitudes are now better aligned with raising kids,
Which is great.
valuing
Yeah.
kids.
And I love you're highlighting it has improved. I know that it doesn't sound like you and I both agree. We have not arrived and actually
Right.
kind of it's not fully evolved, but I think it's better, which I think is great.
Yes.
I want to ask you about an aspect. So you've even described finding self-care in this multidimensional identity. And I hear self-care and it reminded me of something recently I saw posted on Instagram that quite frankly annoyed me. And it was it was somebody who's pretty outspoken in the disability community, very well respected, and I think she actually does a beautiful job of articulating and really identifying some of the experiences that we're commonly having. But this particular post talked about basically stop preaching self-care to special needs moms who don't have the support they need to take a break. And I had 2 points of contention with it. One, self-care is not limited to taking a break. It can be a million different things. 2, true, we don't have the support we need. But if we stop there, what is inevitable? We never get what we need and we never get to take care of ourselves. And now I recognize it's not like a privilege to take care of ourselves, but you've kind of described your way of being as like, we've got to figure out how. Like, it's not going to be handed to us. We know that. And that doesn't mean just because it's not right, doesn't mean we get to stop there. So what are your thoughts when I kind of describe that thought that this person shared?
I don't like the world thinking that moms of special needs kids are, just woe is me. Oh, like they're these poor moms. And I don't think because I don't think the moms want to think of themselves as, oh, poor me. Poor me. I never get a break. As everybody has their village, and because the other thing about it, and I would say this to the moms, self-care looks very different maybe for you than it does for me. It can look, a million different ways. But what I would say to the mom, you gotta figure out how you're gonna be fulfilled as a woman, as a mother, and whatever other roles that you play, how you're going to be fulfilled and how you're going to manage this and put your little strategy together. Because, even when you've got that, and you pulled the old maid and you got that card that really sucks, the whole time you're looking at your hand, you're thinking ahead of how are you going to make this work?
Totally. And
How are we going to make this work?
I am very competitive in nature and games. Even when I'm playing with my kids, they know no mercy from mom. And they still always beat me. But I love it because I think that is like the energy of play than when we're actually playing like a card game. Honestly, I think it is the game-changing energy that we can bring. So I want to take what you just said, and I want to kind of start to wrap up our conversation, but bring it back to kind of something that I was thinking about when I was preparing for our conversation. And it's this, you're saying is like, we got to figure out how we can do hard. We've got to figure out basically how we rise above this, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And yet also, I find myself like actually even right now, it just feels like, ooh, there's a wave that kind of hits me in the face. And before I'm able to recover, kind of, put my hair back in its spot and take a full breath, it seems like another wave's right there. And it can be a little hard to feel like we can kind of come from that place of generating or generative energy like you're describing. So I know that you had those moments too, right? Like we're not delusional that were in this energy all the time. So I guess I want to just acknowledge this because that's going to be what's going to be coming up for a lot of the moms listening to this is but like I'm so tired, I'm exhausted. It just seems like nothing's going my way. How much longer do I have to keep doing this? And there's another wave in my face and now my hair's in front of my face and I can't even breathe. So what would you say to the mom that finds herself just getting hit with one wave after another?
Well, for the children with disabilities who have moms and dads, sometimes my husband and I both do this. Tag, you're it now. I'm going to lose it. So sometimes it is giving the responsibility or whatever is going on or whatever needs to be done, giving it to somebody else because it's too much. Sometimes it's a little too much. But also there is a marathon about this that never ends. And I think you got to have a reserve tank of energy somewhere. Because at this point in my life, and my daughter's 41, every time we want to go somewhere, just the two of us, we have to get a babysitter. Whether it's going out to dinner with friends who come in town, or we want to take a little vacation, or we want to take a big vacation. I mean, this is the time in your life when most of my friends are empty nesters or they can even leave their children alone for a time. Mine needs 24/7. So my husband and I switch it up. Like, you find a babysitter. You find a babysitter. You make the calls because, it's tiresome. I mean, if other families without kids with disabilities, they imagine the day they don't need a babysitter. Oh, wow. The freedom of that. And here I am my husband and I are in our 70s. We're hiring a babysitter all the time. So, but the other thing is that we have gotten to a place where she's so happy. She's got her little job. She has her siblings. She does all kinds of fun things with them and their kids. And it's really working so well. She has a job. This is a kid who can't read, write, cross the street by herself, button her shirt. But she's got good social skills. And she's worked for 19 years at our local grocery store, and the customers absolutely love her. And she's Miss Congeniality of the store. So she has a great life. So I rest on that thinking, hey, you know what? It's all good. I give myself pep talks.
pep
It's
talks,
all
right?
good.
Well, I think, you mentioned it's a marathon, right? And I think it's like, it's having this conviction, this commitment that you're like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to play to win.
Yeah.
It also sounds like it's acknowledging, okay, this is hard. I don't like it, but also tag you're it. I need some help right now. So I think it's like taking all of it in and recognizing it's not going to always feel good all the time, but also that you will find your way back to where you kind of don't feel like you're kind of being directed by it, but rather kind of giving
Right.
the lead, taking the lead.
Right. You're living with it. It hasn't altered your life. And it's not, your life doesn't look so much different than you might have imagined it.
Yeah.
It's a piece of your life. It's not your whole life. And in order to be a good mom to a child with disabilities, you don't have to spend every waking minute of your time caregiving for that child, because if you don't, you feel guilty about it. Figure out how to get over that guilt.
Mhm.
You just have to figure out what state of mind you want to be in and how you want to live your life, and figure out a way to make it happen.
Well, you know what? There's a saying that I say often, and it's that it is simple, but not easy. But I want to end on just kind of the reiteration that you and I both share the belief that we can do hard things. And so that's kind of the
Yes.
commitment that it is simple, but it is not easy, but yet we can still do hard things. And I think that's what's beautiful about having just conversations like this one, where I think it reorients us to that fact is that we are doing hard things and we will continue to do hard things.
And I think we can do hard things fueled by mother's love for.
Bingo. I love that because I think that that is one of the most beautiful experiences of fellow women is seeing the strength and the commitment and the ferocity that comes with mother's love.
Yes.
And so I think that's very well said.
Yeah. All for the love of this child.
Yes. And if you would, so actually, I'm going to put a quick plug in for the Pathway to Peace coaching community that I run. And I want to say it here. Hopefully, those of you who are listening would have heard it in this episode already, but it's currently open. So this episode is going to be airing mid-October. It's currently open. It's only open for a few days a year. But I want to mention it because a couple times you've mentioned you got to figure out how, which I wholeheartedly agree with again. And this is a community where we're figuring out how together. So one of the things that I preach is together is the only way. And so this is a community where if you're like, okay, I'm with you, I got to figure out how, let's do it together. And so this is your invitation to check out the Pathway to Peace coaching community. And with that, let's talk a little bit about your book and just maybe the title of it, as well as where people can find it. If they're like, hey, I want to learn more from this mom who has paved the road, quite literally paved the road ahead of us. Where can they find your book and what is the name of it?
The name of my book is Shine On: Raising Our Children with Disabilities to Lead Bright, Happy Lives. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, every place that books are sold, pretty much. And I wrote this book because I met so many young moms and I saw myself in them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 40 years down the road, and I just felt like I could maybe give them a head start because I've already been through so many of these things. And so the book I wrote is what I wish I had been given when this daughter rocked my world.
Totally. Well, thank you so much. And I encourage anybody interested to check out the book. We'll have links on the show notes. And with that, Cynthia, thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm a listener to your podcast, and I thank you for the good that you do for this population.
Thank you.